deck shuffle.
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. Apologize for the change here. We stick with kind of what we've been doing in the past, the new decision items, there is only one new decision item in the General Assembly's budget book, and that's the pay plan, the 3.2% pay plan. That is for all Senate employees, senators' employees, House employees, senators, and reps. That's the 3.2%, and that's on page 1. You can see the dollar amount. It's roughly $1.18 million. And again, this is also includes the senators and representatives.
Remind me, in years past, we've excluded members of the General Assembly under the theory that they're subject to the commission.
Yeah, that is, there is the Citizens Commission from a couple years ago that tied the senators and representatives to the judges' pay plan. And yesterday we heard that the feds updated that and it's 4.6%, but the governor's budget recommends 3.2.
Right, but the last time that we were asked to raise the salary for the General Assembly, though, we took that out of our budget and left that to the commission, is my recollection. Is that right?
We went with the budget included what the commission recommended.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That percentage, which was, the last percentage was like 5, it was over 5%.
Okay. Any further questions for Adam? Senator May?
I have a question for the chair.
The vice chair, yes. Mm-hmm.
Why are you trying to remove my pay increase?
Any further questions for
I
Adam?
might also add that this also includes the joint committees. So there's Joint Committee on Rules. That pay plan is also, those numbers are also included on page 1. Joint Committee on Legislative Research, both the administrative and the fiscal. Joint Committee on Education. So those joint committees are also included in the General Assembly's budget book. They're towards the back. Those 5 tabs towards the back are for those joint committees. So, but their pay plan is included in the page 1 pay plan tab for their employees also.
Okay, great. Any questions for Adam? Seeing none, I'll conclude the hearing on the General Assembly's budget.
Thank you.
Next up, EcoDevo. And we're going to ask the department to do just the same that the other departments have, and we're just going to focus on NDIs. If there's a question from any of the committee members on something that's reoccurring, then we can stop and have those conversations then.
Perfect. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee. I'm Michelle Hadaway, Acting Director for the Missouri Department of Economic Development. The department is focused on providing businesses the resources they need in order to achieve success and build sustainable growth, strengthening our state's communities, promoting Missouri as an ideal place to visit, help develop a talented and skilled workforce, and maintain a high quality of life for our fellow Missourians. Out of respect for the committee's time, we will only present our new decision items. However, please know that my team and I are always happy to meet one-on-one and talk through how we are helping Missourians prosper. If you turn to page 1, you'll see the pay plan that Adam just went over. So I know that other people have presented this to you. This is a 3.2% increase for the governor's recommendation. And then I will introduce Lori Becklenberg, our Director for Regional Engagement, to go through the next 3 NDIs.
Hi, thank you again. Lori Becklenberg, Division Director for Regional Engagement. I have 3 NDIs to review with you today. The first, please flip to page 29 for a new fund switch item. The Regional Engagement Division is requesting a fund switch from federal to general revenue to keep 5 FTE and $350,000 to continue and keep regional engagement team members. Some of you may be familiar with them. We have Leslie Roan, who is in Southeast, and Sherry Shinnework in the North on the North team. Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development will no longer fund these positions using federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, otherwise known as WIOA dollars, as they have since 2019, due to decreased WIOA dollars they are receiving. These funds were not intended to be a long-term solution to fill these positions. And these 5 positions are currently filled. Next, please move to page 34.
Before she goes into page 34, you guys are going to see several new decision items around our EDAF fund, or Economic Development Advancement Fund. I wanted to go into a little bit of detail on that and why you will see so many decision items around that. So the Economic Development Advancement Fund pays for the Missouri Partnership. So the purpose of the fund was to help promote Missouri as an ideal place to work, do business. Missouri Partnership is our contractor that attracts new businesses, but also promotes Missouri externally and internationally. The fund is based off fees that are assessed based off tax credit. So when a business receives a tax credit, there's an issuance fee that's associated with it. That fund is mostly made up of, depending on the year, historic tax credit fees, Missouri Works fees, private activity bond, and a few other programs, including amateur sporting tax credit, enhanced enterprise zone, neighborhood preservation tax credit, and brownfield. What we are currently seeing with the fund, and you can see in your book, is that right now we are taking in about 5.5. We are taking in about $5.7 million a year into that fund. However, we are spending 7.7. If we continue on this track, by the end of fiscal year 25, we will be negative within the fund, and we will not have enough money within the fund to be able to support the purpose that the fund was created for, which is the promotion of Missouri. Happy to answer any questions with that, but that's kind of an introduction into what you're seeing with the next new decision item.
Okay, on page 34, this request for new decision items is to switch the funding source for the Global Market Access Program, otherwise known as GMAP, from the aforementioned program, the EDAF, the Economic Development Advancement Fund, to general revenue. GMAP is a cost-share program that allows eligible Missouri businesses and companies to participate in specific events designed to create or increase export sales. GMAP had been originally funded through general revenue until FY21, when it moved to the EDAF. However, EDAF can no longer support, so we are asking to be funded from general revenue in the amount of $365,650 program and 3% reserve. The next item is on page 65. This item, as mentioned in previous NDIs, is the request to move the dues payment for the Delta Regional Authority from the Economic Development Advancement Fund to come from general revenue. EDAF can no longer support. The NDI includes the current appropriation authority for the DRA program dues and reserve at $179,397. That is it. Thank you for your time.
We're going to bring up Brooklyn Wassler, the business opportunities, to talk through the next few NDIs. If you turn to page 90, you will see that there's a BCS fund switch. This was not recommended by the governor, but we'll turn to page 111 for the tourism infrastructure increase. Brooklyn?
On page 111 is a new decision item request to increase the tourism infrastructure appropriation by $525,000, which will bring the total appropriation to $2,500,000. This program was created by the legislature in 2018, and the only applicant is the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority of the City of St. Louis for the development of the Enterprise Center, which houses the St. Louis Blues. The construction and tourism industries were greatly impacted during COVID-19, and the applicant was unable to expend the funds for reasons outside their control. The department is requesting an increase in appropriation over the next 3 years, which would allow payments to the applicant to get back on schedule. This doesn't change the amount the program recipient would receive over the life of the 20-year agreement.
And then Paul Eisenstein, Senior Director of Operations, will go over MTCs.
Okay, good morning. I'm Paul Eisenstein. I will be walking through the Missouri Technology Corporation, or MTC, new decision item. So MTC is a public-private partnership. It was formed by the General Assembly, and if the goal is to foster entrepreneurship for new and existing high-tech companies right here in Missouri. MTC has the dual program focus. There's entrepreneurial ecosystem development, as well as a state-sponsored venture capital fund. So I'm going to walk you through the NDI, but before I do that, I do want to share some of the core governor's recommendations, just to provide a little context on the NDI. So if you can go to page 116, this is a governor's recommendation for a transfer from GR for $16 million. This is unchanged from the FY24 governor's recommendation. Now, if you can go to page 123, this is a core decision item for $8.5 million in spending authority. And then again, this is also unchanged from the FY24 governor's recommendation. So that takes us to the NDI on page 132. This is an NDI for $7.5 million in spending authority. If you combine this NDI with the core spending authority that I mentioned earlier, that will equal the $16 million transfer recommendation that we walked through. So I should mention that in FY24, the governor did recommend this NDI, and it was appropriated by the General Assembly, but as a one-time. So our recommendation is that this NDI serve as ongoing spending authority, and that way the total spending authority for MTC matches the recommended transfer amount of $16 million. Okay, if we can go to page 137. This is a core decision item for the CHIPS Act. So the CHIPS Act is a federal program. The goal for the CHIPS Act federally is to reshore semiconductor manufacturing in the United States. Of course, we want to make sure some of that manufacturing happens in Missouri too. So on page 137, you'll see a core decision item. Oh, wow. We'll hear a, yeah, there you go. All right. I'll keep it up. Thank you. This reflects a one-time nature of the FY24 appropriation. It has been zeroed out, but that takes us to page, all right, we're going to keep it up. That takes us to page 144, and this is the new decision item for CHIPS funding. It's a $10 million NDI, and this is for companies that are in Missouri, that are in the semiconductor industry, who are applying for those federal CHIPS Act funds, and so they can have matching funds from Missouri. The recommendation that these funds are ongoing until that $10 million is spent down. And again, these are matching funds from the state that are contingent on companies who receive federal CHIPS Act awards. Okay, with that, my comments are complete. Thank you.
If you'll please turn to page 196, this is a new decision item request for the Main Street program. This new decision item is needed to switch the fund source for the Main Street program from EDAF to general revenue, which requires a GR transfer into the Missouri Main Street Fund. The governor's recommendation is $1,450,000. You'll see the corresponding increase.
Just 1 minute, Senator Arthur.
You will see the corresponding increase for the spending authority on page 201.
Senator Arthur.
Can you talk a little bit about what accounts for the difference between what you all recommended in your proposed budget versus what the governor's recommendation looks like?
Absolutely. We recommended for the budget request the same as the governor recommended last year.
Okay.
So we went off that. The governor decided, which we fully support, to increase that. And you will see that this was originally out of the EDAF fund. We are asking it to come out of general revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
If you will please turn to page 230, this is a new decision item, a transfer increase to GR with governor's recommendation for $2,853,805 for the Modessa Fund, which is the Missouri State Supplemental Downtown Development Program. There are two projects requiring this increase, Kansas City Live and Ballpark Village. Otherwise, this program is no longer active. You will see the corresponding increase for the spending authority on page 244. If you will go to page 256, this is the new decision item request for Downtown Revitalization Preservation Program, known as DRPP. Currently, there's only one active obligation remaining, the College Station Hears Tower in Springfield, which is a mixed-use entertainment, dining, residential, retail office space, and parking. This new decision item is being requested in order to increase the GR transfer for DRPP with governor recommendation of $110,500. The increase is due to an estimated increase of total reimbursement amounts. You will see the corresponding increase for the spending authority on page 269. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to bring Christy Davis, Director of Missouri One Startup. And you guys get to flip to page 2, or book 2.
Good morning, Christy Davis, Division Director for Missouri One Start. I will be presenting 3 new NDIs today, and if we could start on page 299, this will be the first one. Last legislative session, there were 2 new programs that were established that will be administered by Missouri One Start. The first is the Intern and Apprentice Recruitment Act, which is a tax credit program, and the second was the Upskill Credential Training Fund, which operates more like a grant reimbursement program. This new decision item is to fund 1 FTE to help administer both of those programs. If you can now turn to page 304. The next 2 NDIs I'll be requesting are for the Upskill Credential Training Program. Although the Upskill Credential Training Program passed last legislative session, there was no funding that was appropriated for it. So with that program, there was a GR transfer fund that was established in statute. This NDI is for that fund, to create that fund. And if you can next turn to page 309. Again, no funding was appropriated for the Upskill Credential Training Program. This NDI seeks for the maximum funding of $6 million, which is also outlined in statute as the maximum amount for this program. And that concludes my NDIs for this legislative session.
Thank you, Christy. Well, BJ Tanksley, Director of Broadband, comes up. If you turn to page 361, you'll see a program research fund switch. This was not recommended by the governor, so we're going to go ahead and move to page 385 for the broadband NDI.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, BJ Tanksley, Director of the Office of Broadband. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today and talking about our NDI. Our NDI is for $1.5 billion and for 10 additional FTE. This is to allow our office to facilitate the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Act as well as the Digital Equity Act. Those are the two large programs of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that our office will be facilitating. You've probably seen us promoting, but the state was allocated $1.7 billion to try to deploy broadband to everyone who currently lacks access. And we will begin doing that process this spring with a state challenge process and then awarding starting this summer. So we have a very quick timeline to do that. In addition to the large allocation for the infrastructure side, which is the BEAD program, there's also the Digital Equity Act, which is about $24 million. We don't have our exact allocation yet, but that will help us address non-infrastructure barriers to people fully engaging in the digital economy. That's access to devices and skills training, as we say in our plan, to make sure that people are two-way participants in the digital world, not just consumers. And so that's what we will be doing, like I said, asking for the large appropriation to facilitate the programs, the spending authority of the federal funds, and then also the additional FTE to be able to deploy those thoughtfully. The FTE are fully federally funded and will be phased out as the programs pare down.
Senator Black.
BJ, you answered it almost entirely. You talked about these positions and phase out. That was the question that I was going to ask. What is a timeline on one point? And maybe you think, Russ or Senator Black, you ought to know that.
No.
But whenever this legislation was passed, what is the timeline expected at the federal government level now?
Yes. So we have 13 FTE today and had originally thought that would be enough to do the ARPA funded programs we have as well as the BEAD program. The BEAD program has recently told us we have 365 days to make the awards. So
1 year to make the awards on this part of the 1.5 billion?
Yes, sir. And so it's a lot, and that's why we're asking for the additional FTE, is to be able to get through applications quickly and thoughtfully. And we think we can. We have a plan to do so by awarding projects in a timely manner and having 2 full rounds of applications within that 365-day window. It will start around July of this year, meaning we can announce the first round of awards in the fall and immediately start a second round for any non-awarded areas and then be able to award those late winter, early spring of 2025.
Okay. I'm slow, you know that.
No.
365 days to do all of these, and I understand money's not out the door. Well, what's the out of the door date
Yeah.
at this point in time in this legislation?
Yeah, so the actual program is expected to be done by 2028, meaning after we've awarded approximately 3 to 4 years of actual deployment work. Now, NTIA has indicated if the projects aren't complete and everything's moving ahead, they will extend those, but the expected timeline is 2028 at this time.
Thank you.
Senator May, you had a question.
Yeah. So those FTEs are being paid out of those funds?
Yes, ma'am.
As well. And so let me ask you this question. This one right here, this 1.5, the one that you're starting in July, you're saying those are for jobs or those for training?
The largest portion of it is for infrastructure deployment. So for any location across the state that is considered unserved or underserved as of today, we will be able to award grants to broadband providers who want to serve that area or that single location.
Okay.
Typically, in our rural areas, it's large swaths of places. And in our more urban areas, it's isolated locations that haven't been invested in, and then we'll be able to help bridge that gap. The digital equity side probably starts around the same time this summer, where we will work with nonprofits and libraries and education institutions to bring that training side of the conversation as well.
So the reason I'm asking that, because they used to have these, donated computers in the nonprofits, and they used to do training classes for senior citizens.
Yes, ma'am.
So they're not doing those anymore. So would those nonprofits be able to, and so how would they do they do that directly through DED?
Yes, Senator, that's exactly right. Those are the types of things we want to be able to do. An example for that in Kansas City is PCs for People. They take donated devices from large businesses and government organizations and return those to people who need them, right? They help people sign up for internet service and then help them have the skills to apply for jobs and work from home and those kinds of things. That's the exact type of thing we will try to help fund through that Digital Equity Act program.
And you're going to do it RFP?
It'll be a grant, a competitive grant process.
And so and you said that process will start in July.
Yes. We don't even have the notice of funding opportunity for the Digital Equity Act yet. That is expected to come within 30 days of yesterday, oddly enough. But as soon as we have that, we'll have a more determined timeline for it. But it'll be coming this calendar year.
So would you notify our offices when
Absolutely.
so that we can notify those nonprofits?
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Thank you.
We've been doing quite a bit of engagement, but we'll reach out to you for sure.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Okay. Thank you, BJ.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on to tourism with our Director of Tourism, Stephen Faust.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. Stephen Fouts, Director of the Missouri Division of Tourism. Have two NDIs to walk through today, but first I'll direct you to tab 414. You'll see there that our request for the division's FY25 budget and the governor's recommendation for the core is the same at $23.4 million. But then on tab 421, you'll see our first new decision item, which is the governor's recommendation to increase our general revenue transfer by $2 million. And then if you'll tab over to 437, our second NDI is for appropriation authority for FY25 and ongoing. On average, the division spends about 83% of its budget on E&E expenditures. In FY25, this would require the appropriation to be $18.9 million. However, it's only at $16 million, so a resulting shortfall of about $3 million. We're requesting this E&E appropriation authority to be increased on an ongoing basis by $3 million to ensure that the division has the authority to spend the available funds. Again, this is authority only, not additional cash. On top of that, then the governor's recommendation on this page shows $5 million in appropriation authority. The additional $2 million then being related to that governor's recommendation of increasing our general revenue transfer by $2 million. Those are mine.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Arthur.
Do you have any data related to where the economic activity is taking place, what those drivers are, what that looks like?
Yes, I would be glad to provide you with some of that information. We get a variety of studies from regional and national research firms that give us an indication of what people are doing when they come to Missouri, where they're visiting when they come to Missouri, and all those kinds of things. Be glad to share it with you.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And I suspect some of it has to do with a certain football team on the western side of the state.
They are pretty good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none. And the director, I think that was the last NDI.
Correct.
So,
That concludes it. Yep.
great. Well, no further business coming before the committee. I would make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. We're adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. We just left our witness statements up here. Perfect. Yep.